Elizabeth Ferry, now copyrightee Gurney, was an English prison reformer, social reformer and, as a Quaker, a Christian philanthropist. She has sometimes been referred to as the Angel of Prisons. Ferry was a major driving force behind new legislation to make the treatment of prisoners more humane, and she was supported in her efforts by the reigning monarch. Since 2001, she has been depicted on the Bank of England a £5 note. Birth and family background: Elizabeth Gurney was born in Gurney Court, off Magdalene Street, Norwich, Norfolk, England to the Quaker family of the Gurneys. Her family home as a child was Earlham Hall, which is now part of the University of East Anglia. Her father, John Gurney, was a partner in Gurney's Bank. Her mother, Catherine, was a part of the Berkeley family, who were among the founders of Barclays Bank. Her mother died when Elizabeth was only 12 years old. As one of the oldest girls in the family, Elizabeth was partly responsible for the care and training of the younger children, including her brother Joseph John Gurney, a philanthropist. One of her sisters was Louisa Gurney Hall, a writer on education. Awakening of social concern: at the age of 18, young Elizabeth was deeply moved by the preaching of William Savery, an American Quaker. Motivated by his words, she took an interest in the poor, the sick, and the prisoners. She collected old clothes for the poor, visited those who were sick in her neighborhood, and started a Sunday school in the summer house to teach children to read. She met Joseph Ferry, a banker and also a Quaker, when she was 20 years old. They married on August 19, 1800 at the Norwich Goat Lane Friends Meeting House and moved to St Mildred's Court in the City of London. Elizabeth Ferry was recorded as a minister of the Religious Society of Friends in 1811. Joseph and Elizabeth Ferry lived in Plashet House in East Ham between 1809 and 1829, then moved to Upton Lane in Forest Gate. They had 11 children, 5 sons and 6 daughters. Catherine Ferry, born August 22, 1801, unmarried, died May 9, 1886, who wrote a history of the parishes of East and West Ham. Rachel Elizabeth Ferry, born March 25, 1803, died December 4, 1888, married Francis Criswell. John Gurney Ferry of Whalley Lodge, born 1804, died 1872, married Rachel Reynolds, whose mother was a Berkeley. William Stores Ferry, born June 1, 1806, died 1844, married Juliana Pelly Richinder Ferry, born February 18, 1808, died 1884, married Foster Reynolds Joseph Ferry, born September 20, 1809, died 1896, married Alice Partridge Elizabeth Ferry, born February 1811, died 1816, aged 5 Hannah Ferry, born on September 12, 1812, died on March 10, 1895, married William Champion Strayatfield Louisa Ferry, born 1814, died 1896, married Raymond Pelly Samuel Ferry, born 1816, died 1902, married Sophia Pinkerton aunt to poet and translator Percy Edward Pinkerton Daniel Ferry, known as Henry, or Harry, born October 1822, died 1892, married Lucy Shepherd, prison work. Prompted by a family friend, Stephen Grellett, Fry visited Newgate Prison. The conditions she saw there horrified her. The women's section was overcrowded with women and children, some of whom had not even received a trial. They did their own cooking and washing in the small cells in which they slept on straw. Elizabeth Ferry wrote in the book Prisons in Scotland and the North of England that she actually stayed the nights in some of the prisons and invited nobility to come and stay and see for themselves the conditions prisoners lived in. Her kindness helped her gain the friendship of the prisoners, and they began to try to improve their conditions for themselves. She returned the following day with food and clothes for some of the prisoners. She was unable to further her work for nearly 4 years because of difficulties within the Fry family, including financial difficulties in the Fry Bank. Fry returned in 1816 and was eventually able to found a prison school for the children who were imprisoned with their parents. She began a system of supervision and required the women to sew and to read the Bible. In 1817 she helped found the Association for the Reformation of the Female Prisoners in Newgate. This led to the eventual creation of the British Ladies' Society for promoting the reformation of female prisoners, widely described by biographers and historians as constituting the first nationwide women's organisation in Britain. Thomas Falwell Buxton, Fry's brother-in-law, was elected to Parliament for Weymouth and began to promote her work among his fellow MPs. In 1818 Fry gave evidence to a House of Commons committee on the conditions prevalent in British prisons, becoming the first woman to present evidence in Parliament. Humanitarian work. Elizabeth Ferry also helped the homeless, establishing a nightly shelter in London after seeing the body of a young boy in the winter of 1819-1820. In 1824, during a visit to Brighton, she instituted the Brighton District Visiting Society. The society arranged for volunteers to visit the homes of the poor and provide help and comfort to them. The plan was successful and was duplicated in other districts and towns across Britain. After her husband went bankrupt in 1828, Fry's brother became her business manager and benefactor. Thanks to him, her work went on and expanded. In 1840 Fry opened a training school for nurses. Her program inspired Florence Nightingale, who took a team of Fry's nurses to assist wounded soldiers in the Crimean War. In 1842, Frederick William IV of Prussia went to see Fry in Newgate Prison during an official visit to Great Britain. The King of Prussia, who had met the social reformer during her previous tours of the continent promoting welfare change and humanitarianism, was so impressed by her work that he told his reluctant courtiers that he would personally visit the jail when he was in London. Reputation Ferry became well known in society. Some people praised her for having such an influential role as a woman. Others alleged that she was neglecting her duties as a wife and mother in order to conduct her humanitarian work. One admirer was Queen Victoria, who granted her an audience a few times and contributed money to her cause. Another admirer was Robert Peel, who passed several acts to further her cause, including the Jails Act 1823. The act was largely ineffective, because there were no inspectors to make sure that it was being followed. Following her death in 1845, a meeting chaired by the Lord Mayor of London, resolved that it would be fitting to found an asylum to perpetuate the memory of Mrs. Ferry and further the benevolent objects to which her life had been devoted. A fine 18th-century townhouse was purchased at 195 Mare Street, in the London Borough of Hackney, and the first Elizabeth Ferry Refuge opened its doors in 1849. Funding came via subscriptions from various city companies and private individuals, supplemented by income from the inmates' laundry and needlework. Such training was an important part of the refuge's work. In 1924, the refuge merged with a manor house refuge for the destitute, in Dalston in Hackney, becoming a hostel for girls on probation for minor offences. The hostel soon moved to larger premises in Highbury, Islington and then, in 1958, to Reading, where it remains today. The original building in Hackney became the CIU New Lansdowne Club but became vacant in 2000 and has fallen into disrepair. Hackney Council, in 2009, was leading efforts to restore the building and bring it back into use. The building did undergo substantial refurbishment work in 2012, but as of July 2013, the entire building is for sale. The building and Elizabeth Ferry are commemorated by a plaque at the entrance gateway. Death: Elizabeth Ferry died from a stroke in Ramsgate, England, on October 12, 1845. Her remains were buried in the Friends Burial Ground at Barking. Seamen of the Ramsgate Coast Guard flew their flag at half-mast in respect of Mrs. Ferry. A practice that until this occasion had been officially reserved for the death of a ruling monarch. More than 1,000 people stood in silence during the burial. Memorials. There are a number of memorials which commemorate places where Fry lived. There are plaques located at her birthplace of Gurney Court in Norwich, her childhood home of Earlham Hall, St Mildred's Court, City of London, where she lived when she was first married, and Arklow House, her final home and place of death in Ramsgate. Her name heads the list on the southern face of the Reformers Monument in Kensal Green Cemetery, London. Due to her work as a prison reformer, there are several memorials to Elizabeth Ferry in prisons and courthouses, including a terracotta bust in the gatehouse of HM Prison Wormwood Scrubs and a stone statue in the Old Bailey. The Canadian Association of Elizabeth Ferry Societies honors her memory by advocating for women who are in the criminal justice system. They also celebrate and promote a National Elizabeth Ferry Week in Canada each May. Elizabeth Ferry is also commemorated in a number of educational and care-based settings. The University of East Anglia's School of Social Work and Psychology is housed in a building named after her. There is an Elizabeth Ferry ward in Scarborough Hospital in North Yorkshire, United Kingdom. A road is named for Fry at Guildford College, a school in Greensboro, North Carolina, which was founded by Quakers. There is a bust of Elizabeth Ferry located in East Ham Library, Newham Borough of London. Quakers also acknowledge Elizabeth Ferry as a prominent member. Her grave at the former Society of Friends burial ground, located off Whiting Avenue in Barking, Essex, was restored and received in new commemorative marble plinth in October 2003. In February 2007, a plaque was erected in her honour at the Friends Meeting House in Upper Goat Lane, Norwich. Fry is also depicted in the Quaker tapestry, on panels E5 and E6. She is also honoured by other Christian denominations. In the Lady Chapel of Manchester's Anglican Cathedral, one of the portrait windows of noble women on the west wall of the chapel features Elizabeth Ferry. Since 2001, Fry has been depicted on the reverse of £5 notes issued by the Bank of England. She is shown reading to prisoners at Newgate Prison. The design also incorporates a key, representing the key to the prison, which was awarded to Fry in recognition of her work. However, as of 2016, Fry's image on these notes will be replaced by that of Winston Churchill. See also, John Howard, Howard League for Penal Reform, Conger Copyright Nice, Notes. References, Anderson, George M. Elizabeth Ferry, Timeless Reformer. America 173, 22 €3. Clay, Walter Lowe. The Prison Chaplain. Montclair. New Jersey. Patterson Smith, 1969. Fairhurst, James. The Angel of Prisons. Ireland's Own 4539-5. Fry, Catherine. Memoir of the Life of Elizabeth Ferry. Montclair, New Jersey. Patterson Smith, 1974. Second edition, 1848. Available on Google Books. Hatton, Jean. Betsy, The Dramatic Biography of a Prison Reformer. Oxford, UK and Grand Rapids, Michigan, Monarch Books, 2005, ISBN 0-8254-6092-1. Johnson, Spencer. The Value of Kindness, The Story of Elizabeth Ferry, 2nd ed. 1976. Lewis, Georgina. Elizabeth Ferry, London, England, Headley Brothers, 1909. Francisca de Haan, A Euro Fry, Elizabetha Euro unregistered trademark in Oxford Dictionary of National Biography, 1, accessed May 21, 2009. Pittman, E.R. Elizabeth Ferry, Boston, Massachusetts. Roberts Brothers, 1886. Rose, June. Elizabeth Ferry, A Biography. London and Basingstoke, Macmillan, 1980. Reprinted 1994 by Quaker Home Service, ISBN 0-85245-260-8. Rose, June. Prison Pioneer, The Story of Elizabeth Ferry. Quaker Tapestry Booklets, 1994. Whitney, Janet. Elizabeth Ferry, Quaker Heroine. London, UK, George Harrop and Company Limited, 1937, New York, Benjamin Blom, Incorporated, 1972. www.hackney.gov.uk/. Archives, external links, Elizabeth Ferry on the History of Social Work Timeline, a sermon by Elizabeth Ferry, BBC. A Euro. The £5 Question, Who is Elizabeth Ferry? Elizabeth Ferry at Howard League for Penal Reform. Elizabeth Ferry Biography, Association of Elizabeth Ferry Societies Canada, archival material relating to Elizabeth Ferry listed at the UK National Archives, http, Congeners Canal blog. Elizabeth Ferry in the Meeting House. Quakers of Conger. Copyright Nice in France.